All right. Well, you've announced your retirement, and one of the questions that I've had several of my friends want me to ask you, and that is, what's your plans for that? Are you going to continue speaking engagements and educating people? Because from my understanding is that that's what really you've been doing all along in your time in office, was taking time just to educate people. That was really your primary function.
Well, that is where I got people to listen outside of Washington more than in Washington.
Sure.
I will continue to do that. If anybody will listen, I'm going to be talking. And so I'm making some plans for staying active on the Internet and having my websites and doing my speaking engagements. And there's a lot of things we can do. We've had Campaign for Liberty, an organization that's been around now for 5 years. We'll continue with that. That's to educate the grassroots on legislation, and that was the vehicle we used to get the people in support of the audit, and then the people who cared got hold of their congressman, and that's how we at least got that passed in the House. So I'll be continuing to do that and continue to write.
Okay, all right, good. Another question that I had, I listened to your speech, I think it was either earlier this year or last year at the Faith and Freedom Conference, and you took the story of Israel, and you spoke to the issue of just weights and measurements and how the people turned from God and began to ask for a king. And I was kind of curious as to how you see the Scripture's role to some aspect in the function of the government. I understand we're under the Constitution, but how do you perceive those things? Because you obviously pointed back to the Scriptures for just weights and measurements and things. And how do you see those things working together?
Yeah, well, I think Christianity and Judaism and other great religions have been pretty good on instructing us to treat our fellow man honestly. I mean, the Ten Commandments is not, a monopoly of Christians. It's Jewish, and actually Muslims do not reject the Ten Commandments. And there it says, "Thou shalt not steal." So if you can't, and you're not supposed to lie. So if we followed that, we wouldn't have a system of money which is literally counterfeiting. We wouldn't allow, our officials to confiscate wealth. We wouldn't have, the true sense of the word theft is taking money from one person and giving it to another over his objection. If you and I can't do it, I don't believe the government can do it either. So I think the Scriptures are very strong in defending freedom and also emphasizing individual responsibility. If it's our individual responsibility to deal with our eternity, certainly it's not a big step to assume that maybe we as individuals ought to have a responsibility for ourselves rather than saying, well, my neighbors will take care of me no matter what I do with our work or not. They are obligated to take care of me. So I think it's, a free society can be defended rather readily, from Scripture. And of course, the story of Samuel, the people going to Samuel and say, "We need a king. We need a king," and he warned them against it. He said that they would overtax and overregulate and take their children and put them in armies and advised. It was absolutely amazing to me when I first read that Scripture on how astute they were. Samuel was astute at that time, thousands of years ago,
right?
And yet we're still in that same argument. So my guess is if we'd have had more looking at guidance from both the Old and New Testament, we'd be a lot better off.
I agree. Now, do you think that, at least as from my perspective, I see a lot in the Republican Party where we have moved in a similar manner as the Democrats were in 2008. We're almost looking for, somebody that we're not calling for a king, but we're looking for somebody, some hero to ride out and save us from all the mess that we're in. Do you have that perception that there's a lot of people who have that mentality even in the Republican Party?
Oh, obviously. And when I gave my talk on this subject, I did say that we don't have a king, like you say, but we use our government as our king.
Sure.
We want our king to have armies and to spread our goodness and our exceptionalism around the world and spend all this money and to depend on government for help from crazy the grave and de-emphasizing the responsibility of self and the responsibility of family and church and community. So I would say that from my viewpoint, I don't see a whole lot of difference, between the two, because even though Republicans will have better rhetoric claiming, oh no, we want self-reliance, we want to do this, but when they're in office, they spend money. They doubled the size of the Department of Education. They expanded federal health care programs, which now they decry, especially when the Democrats do it. So I think policies, unfortunately, monetary policy, foreign policy, and domestic welfare policies aren't a whole lot different between the two parties.
Okay, all right. And I know my time's getting short. Maybe I got time for one more. And that is, do you have wise words for those who have followed the ideology that you presented? And do you see anybody taking up the mantle for that in the future?
Well, I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic. Things have changed dramatically, especially in the past 5 years, because I've been talking about what we should do since I first went to Congress in 1976. It was only in the last 5 years that we've gotten the attention that I think is important, like the attention on monetary policy and on the Federal Reserve and auditing the Fed. Great progress there. And even on the war issue, I think there's a definite shift of, you'll hear it on the TV all the time. Why are we spending so much money overseas? Why are we doing this? Why are we involved in these wars? And they hate our guts, so why we're over there? And we want to send more troops? No. They might not like us because we're over there.
Right.
And so I think that attitude is changing, and where I'm really encouraged, where I think things are happening that are very positive, are on the college campuses. The younger generation, at least the ones I talk to, and I talk to quite a few, they're very optimistic, they're upbeat, and when they hear the message of liberty and understand the seriousness of the deficits, they're very open to the ideas of a free society, limited government, following the Constitution, and if you have to have a government, make it more local, and make sure that we don't waste ourselves overseas, both in the physical sense of lives lost, but all the people coming back who are sick and injured, and the money we spend. Very open to that, and I think this is why not only did we get tremendous reception on college campuses, we got the reception from the military too. Our campaign received more donations than all the rest put together, because those who are on the front lines know darn well that some of this stuff doesn't make any sense.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your time. I'm wondering if you might have time for one more question, or do you need to go?
No, I can do one more.
Okay. What do you think in terms of this next generation that's coming up, in light of the rules, the scripting of the rules, the way they went and things, how will they have a voice inside the Republican Party? How do you see that working in the future?
Well, a lot did become disillusioned, because although they earned their way and they got to be delegates, some of them were denied their position as delegates. So yes, but that's the reality of politics. Politics too often is dirty business, and it's not always fair. But one statement that I've made is that they claim, the Republican leadership claims they have a big tent and they welcome everybody in. I said, well, if that's not going to happen, we better get control of the tent. And this is what's happening at the grassroots level. Look how they mistreated us up in Maine with our delegation there and just denied our delegates. Well, there's about 6 of them who were pushed around are now running for office.
Yeah.
And think about what happened in Iowa. The chairman of the Republican Party is a supporter, as well as in Nevada and Alaska. So if we're being mistreated by those in charge, and as long as we have this process, as difficult as it is, people have to get involved and play a role in it, and do our very best to win in that way. Because if we don't solve these problems in a peaceful manner, I think our country's more likely to end up with violence in the streets.
Sure. Well, Congressman Paul, it's been an honor. I thank you for taking time for me, and God bless you in the future, brother.